Hey folks, it's Bilal Amjad here and you're watching this video on www.bilalamjad.pw. Today we are going to see the grid control in XAML. Actually, this lesson is about understanding the grid control. As the name suggests, grid control provides you a grid to manage, organize and create a layout for any kind of application, rather it's WPF, SilverLight, Windows Phone, Windows Form and Expression Blend, etc. For any kind of application, grid control is very important for all the UI designers. It's a very good practice to organize your control inside a grid, but the next thing to understand is how to make a perfect grid control. So I'm here to tell you this. First of all, we should understand what is a grid. Actually, grid is a combination of rows and columns. There are different techniques to define these rows and columns depending on the need. But one thing which every designer should know is, although Microsoft provides us ease of drag and drop the controls in our application, still being a designer you should not do this. Always write a code according to the need with proper tags. For example, here's my toolbox and here is my let me create a grid control first. For example, if I want to add a button control inside my grid, then if I drag and drop the button, then what are the defects of it? Let's see. If I select a button and I am dragging it in the grid, then that defect is that the problem is that it has defined some margins. These margins are actually a problem for UI designers because we don't know on what platforms, on what device our application is going to be executed. So if there are margins inside your control, they are a big problem as they will disturb your UI designers, because we don't know in what orientation the device will be and on what resolution our application is going to execute. So and there are some horizontal alignment and there are some default actually properties which we don't need in our control. So the best practice is not to drag and drop the control, but just create it using commands and code. You should write a code for control rather than drag and drop. So let's start with our grid control. As I have told you that grid is a combination of rows and columns. So let's create rows and columns here. For creating one thing, if you want to give a name to your grid, just use X colon name property to define the name. I will say that it's a main grid here. Now I am going to define the rows and columns here. For that I will use grid dot row definitions. First I am defining the rows, and now I will define how many rows actually I need. There is one thing, in columns we use width property, in rows we use height property. I am giving a height of 1 asterisk. Actually the asterisk sign means that give me this much part from the available free portion. I am saying that give me one part of the remaining free portion which is available here. If it's a first row, it means all the grid is empty, so it is allowing me to it is allocating me the space of whole grid. But if I will add another row and I will say that give me the one remaining part, then now it is dividing the parts of the grid into two, because there are two rows but I need the third one also, so it will divide the grid into 3 rows equally. Similarly, now I have to create a columns in my grid control. Similarly, as you create the rows definition, now we have to create the column definition. Same as rows. Now we have 3 rows and 3 columns in our grid control. This is how we have made a grid, but the next thing is how we can insert different controls inside our grid. We can do this by defining our controls inside the grid panel, these tags, and assigning them the rows and columns. This one this area is actually row 0 and column 0. Remember, like arrays, grid also starts from the 0 index. So this is 0th row and 0 column, this area. This is actually 0 row and first column, and this one is 0th row and second column. Similarly, it's a first row and 0th column, first row and first column, first row and second column, and here it's second row, 0th column, second row, first column, and second row, second column. So now we have to insert some controls inside it. So how we can do this is, let's see. I will create actually the text blocks now in my grid like this. This is actually what I was talking, that do not drag and drop any control from the toolbox, but just write the code for it. This is not difficult. Okay, leave the naming properties, just define the text. Okay, by default our controls position is 0 0, means 0th row and 0 control by default, but we can define the rows and columns in our next control. You can see how we can do this. I am just increasing the font size to 40 to make it more clear. Just rename the text block text. Now let's see how we can assign the rows and columns. We can do this by using grid properties row. We will say that your row is 0. Okay, by default, as I have told you, that there is no need to define the 0th row and 0th column. Similarly, if I will not give it the grid.column grid.row property, it means it is 0 by default. So I am just using the column property because it is already in the zeroth row. Okay, now I have to define the rows and columns. My row is first, and if column is 0, then no need to define it. Okay, these are the shortcuts you have to keep in mind. In second, I need both row and column like this. This control copy paste this thing here. We need to just do this. Okay, for this one I'm using I don't need to define the row column here. because it's all obvious that by default it would be in 0th column. So here is how I have assigned the text block controls to different rows, different columns, to actually to different cells in my grid. I have used the text block. Now for your practice you can use different controls like button control and other. This was how we have to use the grid control to align that material properly. This is very good options for UI designer to use track panels and to use grid control. This was all for today. If you have any question, you can log on to my website www.bilalamjad.pw and feel free to ask anything. Thank you very much.